The mysterious encounter. On a distant alien world, a human named John woke up in a strange dark room. His head throbbed, and his vision was blurry. The last thing he remembered was a bright light and strange voices before everything went black. Now he found himself in an unfamiliar place, cold metal walls, and the smell of something unfamiliar in the air. His hands were bound to a chair, and his feet were secured to the floor. His heart raced as he tried to make sense of what had happened. As John blinked, adjusting to the dim light, he noticed something moving in the shadows. A figure slowly stepped forward, its eyes glowing in the darkness. It was a woman, but not like any human he had ever seen. She had smooth, silver-blue skin that shimmered in the dim light. Her eyes were large, dark, and full of curiosity. She wore a tight-fitting suit that seemed to blend with her body, making her look even more alien. She was beautiful, but there was something unsettling about her presence. "Where am I?" John asked, his voice rough. He was still disoriented, but tried to keep calm. He needed answers. The alien woman didn't answer immediately. Instead, she tilted her head, studying him as if he were some sort of puzzle. She took a step closer, her eyes narrowing with interest. John could feel her gaze probing him, as if she was trying to figure him out. "Who are you?" John asked again, his voice trembling slightly. He didn't know whether he was speaking to an alien queen or a soldier, but one thing was clear: this wasn't a friendly encounter. The woman stepped back, raising a hand to her chin as if considering something. Her alien features were mesmerizing, but it was the look in her eyes that intrigued him the most. There was a sense of curiosity mixed with something else, something he couldn't quite identify. "My name is Zora," she finally said, her voice calm and measured. "I have been sent to study you. You are a human, correct?" John nodded, still trying to make sense of the situation. "Yeah, I'm human. But why am I here?" Zora seemed to consider this for a moment, then motioned to the strange environment around them. "This is my world. You were brought here for observation. We do not know much about your species, but we are curious." John strained against his restraints, but they were too tight. "Curious? About what?" Zora's expression softened for a moment. "You are unlike any species we have encountered before. Your body, your mind, it's different. We've studied other creatures, but you are something else." John was still trying to process her words. He had no idea where he was or how he got here, but something told him that Zora's words weren't just idle talk. There was something important about him, something about humans that she didn't fully understand. "Why me?" John asked. "What makes me so special?" Zora hesitated, her glowing eyes flickering with a mix of confusion and curiosity. "We have been searching for answers. Your kind. There is something about your biology, something that could help us." John frowned, his mind racing. He had heard about alien species in stories, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. Why would they be interested in humans? What did they want from him? Before he could ask more, Zora moved to a nearby table and picked up a small device. It glowed softly in her hands as she approached him again. She tapped the device, and suddenly, a holographic image appeared between them. John blinked in surprise, unable to make sense of the strange symbols and images floating in the air. "Do you understand this?" Zora asked, looking at him intently. John stared at the hologram, trying to make sense of it. It was full of symbols and complex patterns, none of which seemed familiar, but something about it felt important. It was almost as if these symbols held the key to understanding everything that was happening. I don't know what this is," John admitted, feeling frustrated. Zora's expression didn't change, but she seemed to be deep in thought. She tapped the device again, and the hologram shifted, showing a complex series of images, alien landscapes, strange cities, and finally, a group of beings. Some of them looked humanoid, others were entirely alien, but they all seemed to be interacting with humans. John's heart skipped a beat. What is this? What does this mean? Zara's voice was quiet, almost like she was speaking to herself. This is a record of our research. We found that humans are unlike any species we've encountered. Your ability to adapt, to survive, it is beyond what we thought possible. We believe your kind could help us. John felt a chill run down his spine. Help you? Help with what? Zara looked at him, her eyes full of confusion, and something deeper, something that felt like desperation. We have been facing a threat, a force that we cannot defeat alone. We thought we understood the universe, but now we are not so sure. John felt a strange connection to Zara's words. There was a deep sadness in her voice, and for the first time, he began to wonder if there was more to his situation than just a random encounter. Could humans really be the answer to an alien crisis? What was so important about humans that made them the key to Zara's people's survival? Zara's eyes locked with his, and in that moment, John knew something else was coming, something that would change everything. His presence here wasn't just a coincidence. His kind, human beings were about to become more than just a curiosity. They were about to become a weapon. And Zara's reaction, confused, curious, but hopeful, was only the beginning of something much bigger. Unseen connections. As the metallic door slid shut behind her, Zara stood motionless, gazing at the holographic images that still lingered in the air. The room was now silent except for the faint hum of the strange devices around her. John remained bound to the chair, his eyes never leaving her. There was a palpable tension in the air, a feeling that something was about to change. For the first time since her people had brought him here, Zara felt the weight of uncertainty in her chest. Zara had always considered herself a scientist, someone driven by logic and reason. She had studied countless alien species, and in her mind, humans had always seemed like a simple puzzle. But now, after seeing the strange connection between John's species and her own, the pieces were not fitting together as they should. There was something more to humans, something that stirred a curiosity she had never expected to feel. Why do you look at me like that? John's voice cut through her thoughts, his words laced with confusion and defiance. Zara blinked, surprised by his question. For a moment, she didn't know how to answer. How could she explain to him that she wasn't just observing him anymore? That there was more at stake than just gathering data? She turned to face him, her voice steady, though a hint of vulnerability slipped through. I'm not sure what you mean. I'm just studying you. John's lips curled into a small, skeptical smile. You're not just studying me. You're looking at me like I'm the answer to something. What is it? Zara clenched her fists, trying to suppress the growing unease that churned inside her. You are the answer to something. But it's not what you think. It's not just your species that interests us. John raised an eyebrow. Not just humans, huh? Then what else am I supposed to be? Zara's heart raced as the gravity of the situation hit her. She had known this moment would come, the moment when she would have to explain to John that his kind was more than a curiosity. But now that it was here, her thoughts tangled, and words failed her. You're more than you realize, Zara murmured, her voice betraying a flicker of doubt. You are the key to our survival. John's eyes narrowed. Your survival? From what? Zara paced slowly, as if trying to find the right words. There's a force, something we've been running from for centuries, something we can't fight alone. Our scientists thought we could handle it, but now we realize we need help. And the help we need is not from other aliens, but from humans. John couldn't contain his confusion. Humans? We're just regular people. We don't have anything special. How can we possibly help you? Zara paused, turning to face him. You don't understand, do you? Your species is different. It's not about your strength or your weapons. It's about your potential. You have something we don't. John stared at her, unsure whether he was being led into some elaborate trick or if she truly believed what she was saying. What do you mean, potential? Zara took a deep breath and slowly walked over to the holographic device. She tapped it, causing the images to shift. This time, the hologram showed an alien race, a species that was unlike any John had ever seen before. Their bodies were skeletal and twisted, with glowing red eyes and jagged, dark armor. They were ruthless, fast, and intelligent, and they were closing in on Zara's people. "This is them," Zara said softly. "The enemy we can't fight." John squinted at the images, trying to understand the significance of the creatures. "They don't look like much. What makes them so dangerous?" Zara's gaze turned to John, filled with an intensity he hadn't seen before. "They are not just warriors. They are invaders. They can break through anything, any wall, any defense. But there's something they cannot understand, something they cannot fight." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "It's your adaptability, John. Humans don't give up. You change. You adapt. You survive." John's heart skipped a beat as he began to understand. "You think we're adaptable enough to beat them?" Zara didn't answer immediately. She was still watching him, studying him in a way that made John feel like a specimen under a microscope. But this time, there was something different in her eyes, something almost hopeful. "I don't know," Zara admitted, "but I have to find out. The fate of my people, it depends on it." John leaned forward, testing the restraints that held him in place. His mind raced as he thought about everything that had happened in the past few hours. He wasn't sure whether to believe Zara or if this was all just part of some grand manipulation. But her sincerity, the way she spoke about her people's struggle, made him wonder if she was telling the truth. "I've got no idea how I can help you," John said slowly. "But if what you're saying is true, maybe I can figure something out." Zara's expression softened slightly, and for the first time, she seemed almost human. "I'm not asking you to figure everything out. I just need you to understand. If we don't work together, my species will fall. And you might be the last hope we have." The silence between them stretched, thick with unspoken questions and possibilities. John's mind was still racing, trying to make sense of it all. But one thing was clear. Zara had just shown him a side of her that wasn't just about curiosity. It was about survival. And that was something John understood all too well. As the tension lingered in the air, Zara stood still, her eyes never leaving him. There was no turning back now. They were bound together by something neither of them fully understood. But one thing was certain, whether they liked it or not. Their futures were now linked. John had no idea how they would stop the invaders. But one thing was certain. He was going to find a way to help. For Zara, for her people, and for humanity. The truth revealed. The silence in the room felt heavier now. The faint hum of the technology that surrounded them seemed to grow louder in John's ears as he sat there, still bound to the chair. His mind was spinning, trying to comprehend the words Zara had said. She believed humanity could stop an alien threat, a threat her people couldn't defeat alone. But how? What made humans so special? Zara hadn't said much after their conversation. She turned away, busying herself with data from another device, her face hard to read. John had been left in the shadows, feeling like a pawn in a game he didn't understand. But he could feel her eyes on him, watching him carefully, weighing his every move. There was something she wasn't telling him. Finally, after what felt like hours, Zara turned toward him, holding a sleek, metallic tablet in her hands. Her face was pale, more serious than before. There was an intensity in her gaze, a silent urgency in the way she carried herself. John couldn't ignore it. "John," Zara said, her voice suddenly colder than it had been before. "There's more you need to know. More than I shared." John's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? What else is there?" Zara placed the tablet down on the table in front of him, then activated it. The hologram that appeared was much more detailed than the previous one, showing a clear map of the galaxy, marked with strange symbols, and numerous blinking red dots that pulsed ominously. The symbols shifted, revealing a complex network of planets, stars, and what seemed to be a web of connections between them. But there was one place on the map where the symbols shifted and flickered unnaturally, almost as if something were interfering with it. "This," Zara said softly, pointing to the flickering part of the map, "is where the problem began." John squinted at the map, trying to focus on the area she was indicating. "What is that? Is that where these invaders came from?" Zara's lips tightened. "No. It's something far older. Something far more dangerous than the invaders. This is where the truth is hidden. This is where the war began." John blinked, unsure of what he was hearing. "Hidden? What do you mean? What war are you talking about?" Zara paused, looking at him with a mixture of sorrow and regret. Then she spoke in a quiet, almost whisper-like tone, as if revealing something too significant to be spoken aloud. "Humans are not just an ordinary species, John. You were created." John froze, his mind struggling to keep up with the words. "Created? What are you talking about? Humans aren't created. We evolved. We've been here for centuries." Zara nodded, but her eyes were filled with something John couldn't place. Pity. Regret. "That's what we thought too. But we were wrong. Humans were engineered long ago. A long time before you ever existed. Created as part of a plan. A plan to fight an enemy much older than anything we've ever faced." John felt his pulse quicken. He could hardly process what she was saying. "You're saying we were made by someone to fight an ancient enemy. But who would do that? And why?" Zara took a deep breath, clearly struggling with the weight of the revelation. "Your ancestors were part of an experiment conducted by an ancient, powerful race known as the Elders. They seeded your species with a unique DNA structure, one that was capable of adapting to any environment, overcoming any obstacle. They knew that, one day, the universe would face a threat it couldn't fight alone." John's mind was spinning. "So, you're telling me that we're not just a regular species, but a weapon?" Zara nodded slowly. "In a way, yes, but it's more complicated than that. The Elders designed humanity to be a last line of defense against an ancient evil, a dark force known as the Nihil. They're a race of pure destruction. They consume worlds, annihilate civilizations, and they've been searching for your kind for centuries." The word Nihil sent a chill down John's spine. He could feel the weight of the name, like a shadow over his entire existence. The very thought of an enemy that could destroy entire worlds, one after another, seemed impossible. And yet, Zara spoke of them with certainty. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" John asked, his voice low with disbelief. "Why all the secrets?" Zara turned away, her hands clenched tightly. "Because I didn't want to believe it. My people have been studying you for generations, and we never knew the truth. We thought humanity was just another species, just another experiment among many. But when we discovered the Nihil, we realized the truth. We realized that you weren't just an experiment. You were the key to stopping them." John's mind was reeling. "So, what does that mean for us? How do we stop them?" Zara met his gaze, her expression hardening. "We don't know, but the Elders left behind ancient technologies, things we don't fully understand yet. We believe that if we can unlock those secrets, humanity might have a chance to defeat the Nihil. But we need you, John. You're the only human we've encountered who shows signs of the unique abilities the Elders intended for your kind." John stared at her, stunned into silence. The weight of the situation was pressing down on him, but one thing was clear. The war Zara had spoken of was not just a battle for her people's survival. It was a battle that could determine the fate of the entire galaxy. And John was at the center of it all. The truth was out there, but the question was, could humanity unlock its true potential before it was too late? And could John play the part he was meant to in this cosmic struggle? The room felt colder now, as the gravity of Zara's words sank in. They were no longer just a human and an alien. John was now a key player in an ancient war, a war that would shape the future of the universe itself. The pieces were finally falling into place. The hidden weapon. The air in the room was thick with tension. John sat silently, digesting the bombshell Zora had just dropped on him. A weapon. Humanity was designed to be a weapon. It was almost impossible to believe. He had always thought of humans as just another species, with their flaws and triumphs, their triumphs driven by nothing more than instinct and will. But now, everything had changed. Zara had said that the Nihil, the ancient force of destruction, had been hunting humanity for centuries. Why hadn't they found them sooner? What was it about humanity that made them so different? John had so many questions, but Zara remained silent, her eyes lost in thought as she examined a new holographic map, her brow furrowed in concentration. Finally, John couldn't hold it in any longer. "Zara," he said, his voice more firm than before, "how do you know all of this? How do you know we were created?" Zora's eyes flicked up to meet his, her expression unreadable. She hesitated for a moment, then slowly began speaking, her voice quiet yet heavy with the weight of her words. "Because the elders left behind a legacy. They never disappeared. They simply hid themselves. Their technology, their knowledge. It's scattered across the galaxy, waiting to be uncovered." She paused, as though considering whether she should reveal more. "But not all of it is easy to find. Some of it is buried deep in ancient ruins, hidden in places even we can't access." John frowned, the uncertainty creeping back into his mind. "And how do you plan on finding it?" Zara's gaze hardened. "We have a way. A weapon." She said the last word with such finality that it struck John like a slap. A weapon. Humanity's secret weapon. The thought was overwhelming. She continued, her voice low and steady. "The elders built something. Something designed to awaken the potential in humans. We believe it's an artifact. A device, possibly a relic from their time, that has the power to activate the dormant abilities within your species. But it's hidden, lost to time. The map I showed you earlier is the key to finding it." John was having trouble processing the enormity of what Zora was saying. "So, you want me to go on a treasure hunt?" he asked, trying to make sense of the idea. "What is this device supposed to do? How will it help us fight these Nihil creatures?" Zora's eyes sparkled with determination. "It will unlock humanity's full potential. The elders gave you the ability to adapt, to survive. But this artifact, it will amplify that. It will give you the power to do things you can't even imagine. To fight the Nihil, to stand against their destruction, to change the fate of the galaxy." John was silent for a long time, trying to wrap his head around her words. This was beyond anything he had ever imagined. He was just a normal guy, an ordinary human. How could he possibly be part of something this grand, this important? Zara seemed to sense his doubt, her expression softening. "You don't have to understand it all right now. All that matters is that we need to find the artifact, and we need to find it quickly. Time is running out. The Nihil are closer than we realize. How much time do we have?" John asked, the urgency in her tone sending a chill down his spine. Zora's eyes darkened. "Weeks, maybe less. The Nihil have already begun their assault on nearby systems. We are next." John stood up abruptly, the reality of the situation hitting him like a cold wave. "So, we're not just talking about saving your people anymore. We're talking about saving everyone." Zara nodded gravely. "Yes, the Nihil's destruction doesn't stop with us. It will spread across the galaxy, and eventually it will reach your planet. Your home. Earth." John's chest tightened at the thought of Earth being wiped out. His entire life, everything he had known, could be gone in the blink of an eye. But it wasn't just Earth's survival on the line. The entire universe was at risk. He was beginning to understand the gravity of the situation. "We need to act fast," he said, his voice sharper now. The uncertainty he had felt earlier had started to dissolve, replaced by a surge of determination. "Tell me what I need to do." Zara gave him a small, almost imperceptible smile. "I knew you'd understand. There's a planet, one of the last places we know the elders visited. It's in a sector that's been abandoned for centuries. The artifact is somewhere there, waiting for us to find it." John felt a knot of fear and excitement tighten in his stomach. "So, we just go there, find it, and use it?" Zara shook her head slowly. "It's not that simple. The artifact is protected, hidden by an ancient defense mechanism. If we don't approach carefully, we could trigger alarms or worse. The Nihil may already know it's there. We'll have to move quickly and stay off their radar." John took a deep breath, steadying himself. This was bigger than anything he had ever encountered, bigger than anything he had ever wanted. But now it was his reality. The weight of responsibility was heavy on his shoulders, but somehow it felt right. He was meant to be here, meant to do something greater than he ever thought possible. "Let's get to work," he said, his voice steady with newfound resolve. "We don't have any time to waste." Zara nodded, the look in her eyes one of respect, and perhaps for the first time, trust. She activated a small device from her belt, and a holographic star map appeared in front of them. As the planets and systems began to swirl into view, John realized this was no longer about survival. It was about taking action. And now he had a mission. They had to find the artifact. They had to unlock humanity's potential. And they had to stop the Nihil from destroying everything. For the first time, John felt a sense of purpose. He wasn't just a pawn in some alien war. He was a key player, someone who could change the fate of the galaxy. As the star map flickered with new coordinates, Zara turned to him, her face set with determination. "Let's go. We have no time to lose." The path to the lost planet. The journey to the planet was not an easy one. Zara's ship, sleek, powerful, and built for stealth, moved through the galaxy like a shadow, evading detection with precision. John had never seen anything like it before. The ship felt alive, humming with power, as if it too was aware of the mission at hand. He sat in the command room, staring out the viewport at the vastness of space. Stars streaked by in a blur, distant suns, twinkling like tiny diamonds scattered across an endless sea. It was beautiful, in a way, but it only reminded him of how far they were from Earth, how alone they were in this mission. The weight of what they were trying to do pressed on him, but he pushed it aside. There was no room for hesitation now. Beside him, Zara sat at the controls, her fingers gliding over holographic displays with ease. She looked focused, her brow furrowed in concentration. The map she had shown him earlier was displayed in front of her, the flashing coordinates marking the path to the forgotten world. John could feel the tension between them. It wasn't just the urgency of their mission, but the silence, the unspoken tension that seemed to hang in the air. "How much longer?" John asked, breaking the silence. His voice sounded distant, even to himself. Zara glanced at him briefly, her eyes flickering with something. Maybe concern, maybe something more, but it was gone before John could interpret it. "A few hours," she replied. "We'll be there soon." John nodded, trying to steady his breathing. The closer they got, the more real it all seemed. The artifact, humanity's secret weapon. His heart beat faster with each passing minute, but there was something else gnawing at him, something deeper than the mission or even the Nihil threat. "What's going to happen if we don't find the artifact?" John asked, his voice quieter now. Zara didn't look at him, but her hands stilled on the controls. The question had caught her off guard, and for a moment, the silence stretched between them like a thick fog. She let out a long breath before speaking, her voice heavy with truth. "If we fail," she began slowly, "the Nihil will wipe us out. They're relentless, and once they destroy us, they will move on to the next planet, and the next, until nothing is left. The elders knew this, which is why they created humanity. You are the last hope, John." John leaned back in his seat, the weight of her words settling over him like a stone. There were no second chances, no safety net. If they didn't find this artifact, everything would end. Everything. The idea was terrifying, but it also fueled a fire inside him. He had never been one to back down from a challenge, but this was bigger than anything he had ever faced. "I won't let it happen," he said, his voice firm with resolve. "We'll find it. We have to." Zara turned to look at him, her eyes softening just slightly. "I know," she said quietly. "I know." The ship jolted suddenly, the artificial gravity momentarily flickering. John was thrown forward, his stomach lurching as the entire vessel rocked. Zara's hands flew to the controls, stabilizing the ship in seconds. The view outside the viewport shifted from stars to dark, swirling clouds of cosmic debris. They had entered a dangerous sector of space. "Something's wrong," Zara muttered under her breath, her eyes scanning the readings on the console. "We've entered a restricted zone. The Nihil must have already detected us." John's pulse quickened. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. "Are we being followed?" Zora's eyes flicked to the holographic map, which had turned red, warning signals flashing across its surface. "No," she said, her voice taut with tension. "But they know we're here. The Nihil have placed traps in this sector. It's a no-man's land, dangerous for anyone who ventures in." John's grip tightened on the seat in front of him. The thought of facing the Nihil right now, with no backup and no plan, was terrifying. But they had no choice. They couldn't turn back. The artifact was too close. Suddenly, a high-pitched whine filled the room, and the ship shuddered again. A large, dark shape appeared on the radar, a massive warship emerging from the shadows of space. Its size was overwhelming, its energy readings off the charts. It was a Nihil vessel. "They're here," Zara whispered, her face pale as the screen showed the incoming threat. The Nihil ship was moving toward them with terrifying speed. John's heart pounded in his chest. He could feel the tension rising in the air, the electricity of impending battle crackling in every corner of the room. The Nihil ship wasn't just huge. It was armed to the teeth. He had no idea what kind of technology it possessed, but one thing was certain. They couldn't outrun it. "We have to make it to the planet, Zara," John said urgently, looking toward her. "Can we lose them in the debris field?" Zara shook her head. "It's too risky. If we go through the debris, we'll be easy targets. We need to fight." John blinked. "Fight? We can't fight that thing." "What do you mean, fight?" Zara's face darkened. "We don't have a choice. I've got one weapon. An EMP blast powerful enough to disable their systems for a few minutes, but it's a one-shot deal. After that, we'll be sitting ducks." John clenched his fists, adrenaline surging through his body. "Then we use it." The Nihil ship was getting closer. John could hear the hum of Zora's ship preparing for battle, the tension thick in the air. This was it, their only shot. "We hit them first," Zora said, her voice calm but resolute. "If we don't, we'll never make it to the planet." John nodded, his mind racing. "Let's do it." The ship shuddered again as Zara launched them straight toward the massive Nihil warship, the final countdown to their survival beginning. In the blink of an eye, they would either succeed or be destroyed. And John wasn't ready to give up just yet. The calm before the storm. The space around them was eerily quiet, just the soft hum of the ship's engines and the rhythmic beat of John's own heart in his ears. His mind was racing, but the cold emptiness of space felt strangely peaceful, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Zara sat beside him, her hands still poised over the controls, her eyes locked onto the massive Nihil warship closing in on them. She looked calm, almost detached, but John could feel the tension radiating from her. He knew that despite the serenity of the moment, both their lives and the fate of countless others were hanging by a thread. "This is it," Zara said quietly, her voice steady but full of determination. "Once we engage, there's no turning back." John swallowed hard. "You said this EMP will disable their ship, but for how long?" Zora didn't look at him, but her eyes flickered toward the glowing holographic display. Long enough. If we're lucky, it'll be enough to get us close enough to the planet. But luck is never something we can rely on. Her words hung in the air like a warning. She was right. There was no guarantee. The Nihil were known for their cunning and ruthlessness. The moment their ship was disabled, they would regroup, recover, and hunt them down. John's grip on his seat tightened. The weight of the situation was almost suffocating. They were going up against a species that had destroyed entire civilizations, a species that had no mercy. And here they were, 2 people, 1 weapon, and a chance to survive. "We have to make this count," John said, more to himself than to Zora. Zora gave him a brief glance, her eyes sharp and calculating. "We will." There was no more time for conversation. The Nihil warship was only moments away from firing. John's breath caught in his throat as the ship's massive silhouette filled the viewport. It was a thing of nightmares. Dark, foreboding, and impossibly large. It was like staring at the face of death itself. Zora punched a few buttons on the console, and the ship's engines roared to life. They accelerated toward the Nihil vessel with blinding speed, the ship's shields flaring as they entered the range of its weapons. "EMP charges primed." Zora's voice was cold, mechanical, as if she had done this 100 times before. "Prepare for impact." John could feel the electricity in the air, the crackling anticipation of the battle to come. His body was on high alert, every muscle tense and ready to spring into action. He had never been in a real fight before, not like this. But he knew one thing: he wasn't going to die without a fight. As they closed the gap, the Nihil warship fired. A massive plasma bolt shot from its cannons, moving at an impossible speed. John's eyes widened in panic, but Zora didn't flinch. Instead, she expertly maneuvered the ship, narrowly dodging the blast as it streaked past them. The ship shuddered as they made a sharp turn, and the plasma bolt collided with the space debris behind them, creating a brilliant explosion of light. "Not today," Zora muttered under her breath. With one swift motion, she hit a button on the control panel, and the EMP weapon powered up. The entire ship seemed to vibrate with the immense energy being funneled into the weapon. John could feel the hairs on the back of his neck stand up as the countdown began. 3 seconds. 2. 1. Now. Zora slammed the button, and a wave of electromagnetic energy surged from the ship, heading straight for the Nihil warship. The air itself seemed to crackle with power, the pulse of the EMP shooting toward their enemy with blinding intensity. For a brief moment, time seemed to slow. The Nihil ship fired again, but its weapons sputtered and fizzled out, as though something had interrupted its power supply. The EMP hit with devastating force, and the Nihil ship's energy shields flickered and dimmed. Their weapon systems malfunctioned, and the ship lurched as its internal systems went offline. John could hardly believe what he was seeing. They had done it. The Nihil warship was disabled. For a fleeting moment, he felt a surge of triumph. But Zora's voice snapped him back to reality. "It won't last long. We need to move. Now." Without hesitation, Zora pushed the ship forward, speeding toward the planet at full throttle. The Nihil ship, now vulnerable and disoriented, was trying to regain control, but it was clear they were too late. The few remaining Nihil fighters launched from the warship, buzzing like angry hornets, determined to stop them before they reached their destination. "We've got company," John warned, his heart racing as small enemy ships zipped past them, firing lasers. Zora didn't flinch. She gripped the controls with deadly precision, weaving through the blasts with uncanny accuracy. The battle was far from over, but at least they had bought themselves some time. "Hang on," Zora muttered. "This is going to get rough." John braced himself as the ship dodged a barrage of incoming fire. He could hear the hiss of the lasers skimming past the shields, feel the vibrations beneath his feet as the ship was rocked by near misses. They had to get through this, had to reach the planet. The Nihil fighters were relentless, attacking from every angle. One ship exploded in a burst of flame just meters from them, but Zara's expert piloting kept them on course. The planet grew larger in the viewport, its surface covered in thick clouds of dust and unknown terrain. It was a desolate place, perfectly suited for hiding something precious and dangerous. "We're almost there," Zara said, her voice tight but determined. "Get ready." John nodded, his pulse pounding in his ears. They were about to land on a forgotten world, one that held the key to humanity's survival, and the Nihil were still coming for them. The real fight had only just begun. The final confrontation. The planet's surface loomed closer as Zara expertly piloted the ship through a storm of incoming enemy fire. John's eyes never left the viewport as the landscape beneath them grew sharper, revealing jagged mountain ranges, deep craters, and long-forgotten ruins that hinted at a once thriving world. The alien terrain stretched endlessly beneath them, a silent witness to the ancient civilizations that had called this place home. "We're almost there," Zora muttered, her fingers dancing over the controls. Her voice was steady, but John could see the strain in her eyes. The EMP had only bought them time. The Nihil were relentless. Even though their warship was temporarily disabled, their fighters were still closing in, circling like predators. John gripped the edge of his seat. How far to the artifact? Zora glanced at the readings. "We're within a few clicks. But the closer we get, the more dangerous it becomes. The Nihil know we're here now, and they won't stop until they destroy us." John's jaw clenched. "Then we stop them first." With a deep breath, Zora activated the ship's cloaking mechanism. The ship's exterior shimmered, blending seamlessly with the surrounding atmosphere. "This is our only chance. We won't have long before they detect us." The ship coasted low over the surface, barely skimming the rocky landscape. The terrain was treacherous, sharp cliffs, deep ravines, and strange, twisting rock formations that seemed to pulse with some ancient, forgotten energy. There was no sign of life, no evidence of any modern technology. Yet John could sense that something powerful lay beneath the surface, a force hidden away, waiting to be awakened. "Where exactly is it?" John asked, his voice tight with anticipation. Zora pointed toward the largest of the ruined structures in the distance, a colossal pyramid that stood like a monument to a forgotten age. "It's beneath that structure. That's where the artifact is kept. But the Nihil won't let us get that close without a fight." The ship descended lower, and the first enemy fighter appeared on the horizon. It was sleek, fast, and dangerous, darting in and out of view, firing shots that tore into the atmosphere around them. Zara swerved the ship expertly, narrowly avoiding the blasts. But she knew the clock was ticking. If they couldn't reach the artifact soon, their chances of survival would dwindle to nothing. "Zora, we need a plan," John said, his voice edged with urgency. "They'll be on us in seconds." Zora's eyes narrowed, calculating. "We have one shot. I'll drop you off near the pyramid. Once you're there, find the artifact and get it activated. I'll hold them off as long as I can." John's heart raced as he processed her words. "What about you? You'll be alone out here, fighting off an entire fleet." "I've got no choice," Zora replied, her voice unwavering. "This is the only way. Don't worry about me. Just get to the artifact." Before John could protest, Zora's fingers flew across the console, and the ship descended rapidly toward the pyramid. The fighters were closing in, but Zora wasn't about to let them stop her. She dove into a series of evasive maneuvers, twisting the ship in ways that seemed almost impossible. "Get ready," she shouted over her shoulder. John's seatbelt tightened, and the world outside the viewport spun wildly as Zora pulled the ship into a sharp dive. The pyramid grew larger in front of them, its ancient stone walls rising up to meet them. Then, with a jolt, the ship landed in a clearing just a few hundred yards away from the structure. The ship's landing gear hit the ground with a thud, and the ship powered down. Zara turned to him, her eyes filled with a mixture of determination and resolve. "This is it, John. Get the artifact, and bring it back. We're counting on you." John nodded, his pulse pounding in his throat. Without another word, he opened the hatch and jumped out, landing on the rocky ground. The wind howled through the empty landscape, carrying with it the smell of dust and old stone. The pyramid stood before him, its dark silhouette imposing and mysterious. He started running toward it, his mind focused entirely on the task ahead. The battle was just beginning. Behind him, Zora's ship fired at the incoming Nile fighters, her weapons lighting up the sky in bursts of brilliant energy. The sound of explosions echoed through the air as the two forces collided in a deadly dance. John reached the base of the pyramid and began searching for an entrance. The stone was worn by time, cracked and weathered, but there was a faint glow coming from deep within. It was a faint pulse of light, like a heartbeat that had been undisturbed for millennia. The ground trembled beneath his feet as the Nile fighters closed in. John didn't hesitate. He slammed his palm against the wall, feeling the cool stone under his hand. The pulse of light grew stronger, and the wall in front of him began to shift. Massive stone slabs groaned as they parted, revealing a narrow passageway leading into the heart of the pyramid. John stepped forward, his heart thumping in his chest. The passage was dark, the air thick with the weight of ancient secrets. He could feel the power of the artifact calling to him, guiding him deeper into the structure. The walls seemed to close in on him as he descended deeper, but he didn't stop. He had no choice but to keep moving forward. Back outside, Zora's ship was taking hits, her shields flickering as more Nile fighters closed in. She was doing everything she could to hold them off, but the odds were stacked against her. John reached the chamber at the heart of the pyramid. It was vast, its ceiling stretching far above him. And in the center, sitting on a pedestal, was the artifact, an orb of shimmering light, pulsing with an energy that seemed almost alive. The moment his hand touched the orb, the ground shook violently. A wave of energy surged through him, overwhelming his senses. For a moment, he thought he might pass out, but he fought against it. The artifact responded to his touch, glowing brighter as the energy of the ancient device unlocked within him. The Nile fighters outside began to falter. Their ships, already weakened by Zora's previous attack, now sputtered and shook, their systems failing. But the danger wasn't over. Zora's ship had taken too much damage. "Zora!" John shouted through his comm, but the line crackled with static. He had the artifact. Now it was time to hit back.